How you doing, everybody? My name is Leo Schofield, and today we are joined by a special guest. Her name is Sharlene Christensen, and she works at, I believe, First Advantage. She is a veteran, just like me, and like you guys and like myself, we are so interested to have you, and we are so happy to have you as well, Charlene. We just kind of want to know real quick a little bit about yourself and what branch of service you were in, just for viewers' information.
Sure. So my name is Sharlene Christensen, as Leo mentioned. Today I'm a Senior Director of Customer Success at First Advantage. I did start out my career in the Army as an information technology specialist. That's a 25 Bravo, primarily computer support. So I served 4 years, had the pleasure of being stationed in Kuwait for a couple years, and then I was in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri before I got out of the military.
That's the. I mean, I was in the Navy, so like when you said the Bravo, I was like, ooh, we just had like we called them rates. So I was like Bravo, but I know a lot of our Army vets will know and exactly know what you did, and they'll understand. So basically, I'm gonna ask a few questions. We're gonna keep this real calm and casual, as you would know. So first, I'd just like to ask, like, during the Army and as you were transitioning, were there any, hardships that you had encountered that have helped you and kind of transform who you are today?
I would say the hardships that I faced while I was in the military was definitely being in a very male-dominated field. Generally in the military, it's very male-dominated, but the IT world was also very male-dominated. So, getting out and working in a very gender-diverse workforce was a little different from what I was used to. I also think getting out and being able to explain some of the things that I did in layman's terms for civilian people that had no military background definitely was I would say more of a challenge for them than me. I've learned to kind of tailor explaining my background over the years, I should say, and kind of get out of that military talk for people that don't necessarily get it. But I would say that was the biggest challenging thing, is being able to explain what I did and showcase my soft skills and how those could be relevant in a position that wasn't necessarily equivalent to what I did while I was in the military.
Okay. And to boogie off that question real quick, I just kind of want to know, and this for female viewers as well, how did that come about? I know it had to be a lot different from, like, I know you said how you work now and it's kind of you're working with male and female. What was it kind of like just to work with a bigger group of just men compared to like a diverse team now? Was it like, wow, you couldn't really relate with them? Is it something that kind of had to just go through?
I think I would say the fortunate thing, well, yes, it was male dominated. I had a lot of friends from AIT, which is like my training school. And so my first duty station, I went there with many people I was in school with. And yes, they were men, but I kind of knew them on a more personal level. So I think that definitely helped. I mean, when you're 18 years old going to a foreign country in the Middle East, it's very hard to wrap your head around that. But being able to lean on those networks of individuals that I know, I think definitely helped then. And I'd say just leaning on your network, as you even get out and building your network, because that's something that, is kind of hard to do, especially knowing that you're probably getting out at different intervals than your service members were in. You're going back to where you lived at, which isn't necessarily in the same state or the same city. So it definitely taken an adjustment, but I think also being able to find allies and other women veterans were helpful as well, and being able to share experiences and just know that, I'm not alone in my feelings or in my position at that point in time.
You know, and when I first talked and I was adding people on LinkedIn that was in our community, right? That was one of the biggest things you said to me that really stood out was, connecting with the veteran communities, going to the VFW, just connecting and being able to talk to each other like easier than it is than to talk to somebody who hasn't been in the service, just really making that bond. That's another thing for the viewers out there. I met Sharlene by literally going to where I lived and just connecting with as many veterans as I could. And she was one of the only people that kind of contacted back and definitely was, stood out in that sense. and she was veteran, so it was like easy for us to conversate about vets and what we can do and what I can do to actually try to help the vets who are transitioning. And again, I do appreciate you, Charlene. Just a few other questions I would have. So, motivation wise, is there something that like gave you a drive to get into the career field that you did as soon as you got out, or was it something that you kind of thought throughout your military career, you know, or was it post transition? Was it like as you're transitioning?
So I'd say my first thought was, kind of doing what I knew. And so, at the time I held a role where I was kind of like a first level help desk support at the battalion level. So I'm working with kind of senior leader executives, hey, my computer isn't working. Did you restart it? Basic things like that. And then I moved to Fort Leonard Wood, and we were essentially like, if another 9/11 had happened, we would be dispatched somewhere across the United States to stand up communications for them. So it was radically different from what I was used to, fixing computers on a daily basis. And instead of, we were setting up like tactical equipment and beaming satellites up into the sky and running fiber cables. And so it wasn't quite a desk office job as I was used to. So my first thought of when I got out is, well, I can work at a help desk. I can take phone calls. And that's where I started. It was the funny piece I said about networking, but I got a position at a call center with a couple friends I was in high school with. And so they were in college at the time or finishing up college, and they were able to get my foot in the door there. And so I kind of moved from that call center to another call center, and we were kind of a specialized support. There's kind of an offshore support team and an onshore support team. We were that onshore kind of white glove approach team. And then from there, my next steps was I wanted to move into project management. And I've met a lot of naysayers throughout my career, I guess, that doubted me, and that really fuels me. And so I did move into project management in a reporting role, and I had never done any kind of reporting. I'd always been in customer support, but I thought, I went into the military and learned computers. I can move into the reporting space and learn reporting. And I'd say the ally or the champion I had was the hiring manager. Her father was actually in the Vietnam War. And so we really connected. We actually met at a networking event. I had shared my background. She had shared her father's background. And then there was a job opening, and I had applied for it, not knowing that she was the hiring manager. And so I really go to say is, building those relationships. I actually ended up working for her, moved around a couple other positions, and then she came to First Advantage and brought me with her. And so I think, getting out, not definitely keep connection with your military colleagues and your friends and your leadership if you can, but building those civilian connections as well. Getting involved as there's employee resource groups. I had a really big veterans group at my last company that I was a part of and I was a co-chair of. And, knowing that you don't have to be a social butterfly to network. Go find that other person that's not a social butterfly and talk to them. Start small, because I think for a lot of people, they're really overwhelmed in social environments. But building those connections are going to help you, at your current employer or even future employers down the road.
I like that. That's literally the main reason why I was like, man, I should go find some veterans who are in our community, just to build that type of bond and that relationship with them. Even if I don't know, everything about you and you don't know everything about me, the one thing that sticks out was we both served our country for a remainder of time, and now we're both trying to fill in and find careers that suit us best. That's one thing I know I can connect with a lot of people on. With that being said, the skills that you developed in the military, let's talk about that. The hard skills and soft skills that you either had prior or while in the service, what were they and how did they kind of contribute into you working your career field now?
So soft skills and hard skills, it's a loaded question. I'll start it with this, is I did not have a background or a passion for computers before I joined the Army. I looked at a few different branches of service. I was a senior in high school and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do as my next steps, but I knew that I wanted to get away from, the potential negative future I was seeing where I was. And so I did, the ASVAB, and they came back and they said, well, you scored really high for administrative and really high for IT, and we think this job would be a good fit for you. I was also not an athletic person. I had many people that laughed at me and they're like, but you don't like sports and you don't like computers, but you're going to go into the Army. And I said, yes, I'm willing to take that chance. I want to travel. I want to meet new people. And that's exactly what I got to do. So I wouldn't say before the military I had a lot of those skills. I would say definitely leadership skills. I feel like that's something that's always just been kind of within me, is, wanting to take charge, and, be able to take direction and pivot as needed. I think those skills have definitely helped me to be open. I think you have to have, as they always at least talked in the Army, was have a lot of resiliency. If you face adversity, bounce back, know that there are other opportunities out there for you. I have worked for places that did not work out. I have 5 employees, and I said, it's unfortunate to be laid off, due to company downsizing, and it's unfortunate to be terminated due to performance. But knowing that you can pick yourself back up, go back out there, bring the skills, to a new employer. And I would just say probably my level of organization. When you work, I should say any role, you have to bring the soft skills of being able to stay organized. You have to be able to stay on target. You have to be able to communicate professionally. And I'll say a lot of the communication in the military is not, say, the same way in a corporate world. And that was a little challenging for me, I'll say, when I first got out, which was, I guess, being a little more delicate in my responses to people. And I had some senior leaders that pulled me aside, and they had knew my background, and they just, explained to me, like, we understand what you're trying to say, but it's how you're saying it. So over the years, I've learned to kind of adjust my speaking style to maybe who I'm working with. But I also think it takes, working with somebody to understand how they need to be communicated with. So communication is a big thing no matter where you'll go. And I think the military, with the kind of leadership structure, forms that path for you. But getting out and dealing with people that are civilians is just, it's different from dealing with veterans. I'll say that.
It sounds like you had a goal, and you kind of overcame and adapted to the lifestyle that they were kind of trying to put you in. It seems like, as soon as you got there, you had a mistake or so, but you eventually adapted to, how to actually talk to people. And it was just I would say it was just kind of like a time thing, that you just had to, like, kind of take time, not kind of relax a little bit, and then reevaluate the situation and go for it.
I think definitely a time thing, and definitely understanding, what type of people can take, I'll say, direct feedback, and what type of people that you may need to be a little more delicate in your approach with. But it did take time. And so I think that's the biggest thing, is, like, if you get out and you're fresh and you go work for a civilian employer and they just don't get you, find somebody who does, and find somebody who's willing to coach you and counsel you in a positive and a constructive way, but be open to that feedback, because they really do want the best for you. They're not trying to set you up for failure. And I think it's that being open piece, that there were certain times where I took feedback and I looked at it very negatively, but looking back now, I can realize that that person did want to help me. I just wasn't open to listening to their guidance at the time.
That brings me to my next question, actually. Something that I struggle with, being a new transitioning service member and all, is learning how to slow down. From the get-go in the military, we're all taught, hey, you got to go from point A to point B at this time and make sure it's done by this time to get off work, or to continue to, do what you want to do, to get liberty, to have, your off time. How did you overcome that? How did you manage to go from speedy, got to get this done, to kind of taking a step back and slowing down on life, and, like, really honing in on either your job or just personal lifestyle?
Yeah, it's funny because in the Army they always say move with a purpose. And my boyfriend always jokes, because he's from the North, the Midwest, I should say, and I'm from the South. And he said, everybody in the South moves slower. And I said, no, not everybody all the time. I think it's kind of, I have a boss now who always tells me and my team to leave some for tomorrow. I have team members that are very much like, okay, my task lists are these 10 things. I have to get all these 10 things done. And if I don't get them done, I'm going to work all night long. I don't believe in working all night long. I believe in a work-life balance. And I've worked with a lot of people in the corporate world that find that to be a radical idea. I have employees that have 15, 20 years tenure at the company, and they find that to be radical, that, somebody will work 40 to 50 hours a week and log off. Whether you have children or don't have children, I don't have children. But I enjoy my personal time. And I think, if you have a family, you enjoy your personal time. And knowing, you show up to work every day to do your best, but not everything can get done. And having the strength to have a difficult conversation with somebody if something can't get done, and set realistic expectations. If something's not going to get done, I don't want you to just tell me you'll have it done in the next hour, or you'll have it done tomorrow. Like, is that realistic? So I think it's one, understanding the pace of the business, two, understanding that you can only accomplish so many things, and three, knowing how to prioritize and set expectations for things that you can't deliver, and making sure, that you're communicating clearly to the other person, because most people are understanding. As long as you provide them an update with an expectation, that's fair. But if you go ghost, then that's a problem. So I think it took a while in some cases for me to slow down, but also to, understand that, well, yes, I may be really good or really fast at something. There's also other skills that I'm probably not so good and not so fast at. So just trying to have a balance, take in, know what I'm good at, but also take the time to step away and to practice the skills that I may not be so good at. So there's kind of an equal balance across the board.
I definitely agree with you, Charlene. That's like something that I'm still working on myself. Is I'll work too hard one day, and then at the end of the day, I look back at all the work I did and just contemplate whether I did enough or if I did too little. And then I always think I already did too little, so I'll stay up extra late to do more, and then I overwork myself. And then that kind of balance is something I'm still trying to develop. And a lot of the veterans I talked to today that are actually with me during this little challenging time, they're having a struggle too. It's really it's something that, like, we understand we have to take our time on, but we're just like, hey, I want to hurry up so that way I can relax and then go back to work. I can start getting this done, get this done. It's definitely been a challenge and a battle in that sense. It's definitely been a challenge and a battle. And then I just wanted to know, personally, do you have anyone that you see as like your greatest mentor to you? And some of the advice your mentor, if you do have one, might have said that, sticks out to you and could really stick out to some of the vets that are watching this as well?
Yeah, I would say, thinking about mentors I've had, I would say one is the friend that I've worked for. She's been a great mentor. She was, older than me, had advanced her life differently, but there was a lot of similarities. And I find there was a lot of strengths she had that maybe she didn't see as strengths, and strengths that I had that I didn't necessarily see as strengths. I think a mentor and a mentee is a give-take relationship. I think there's things, of course, you can learn for your mentor, but there's also things, hopefully, and value add that you can bring to them as well as the mentee. So she, was a civilian. Her father was in Vietnam in the Army. And the other mentor was a co-chair that I worked with at my former company. And he was a 20-year retired Marine officer. And I feel like he really mentored me because we understood each other from a veteran perspective, but there was a significant age gap. There was a branch gap. And there was a lot of times where we butt heads. But I'm a full believer of, you can have a healthy argument and agree to disagree. I think there's a constructive time to voice your opinion. And while that may differ from somebody else's, that's okay. And another friend of mine, I think a lot of my mentors, I would say, are the people that helped me the most were veterans. And as you talked about moving too fast and, just being passionate and things like that, I remember one time being in a very lively discussion with him in the cafeteria. And I don't remember what we were talking about, but it was just, we were into what we were saying. And later on, I had somebody come up to me and they were like, oh, well, were you guys fighting with each other? I said, well, what do you mean? And they were like, well, you were moving with your hands and talking quickly. And I said, that's just how we communicate. And so for me, I think my mentors have all been somebody with more life experience than me, or a different life experience. because they've been able to put things into other perspectives that I may not have been able to see. So I know there's the concept of having a formal mentor, and I think that's important. Maybe you work at a company where they'll pair you up with somebody. But I also think finding people that are a champion of you and finding people that you can learn and grow from, that you can just bounce ideas off of. Sometimes they're not going to tell you what you want to hear, but sometimes you got to hear that hard truth. So I don't know if that was the direct answer you were looking for, but I think you're going to have multiple mentors through life, and just be open and willing that it may be the same race, the same gender, different race, different gender, different religious background, but that person can add value to your life.
That was definitely like one of the best answers actually that you could have gave me, Charlene, because I know a lot of people are like, man, what should I look for in a mentor? And you just basically like covered the whole thing. So I was like, that's perfect. You knocked out some of the questions I had. Now the important but the not so fun topic, resumes.
Yep.
Right? A lot of us struggle, even myself. I struggle with my resume. I know I talked to a few people about, how important it is not to have military jargon on their resume, not to, coming from a Navy background. I could say I did maintenance on a scuttlebutt. A lot of people wouldn't know what a scuttlebutt is when it's really a water fountain. So it's, for my question is, how important is it to have a great resume? And what would you say that is important to really highlight on resumes? And then a follow-up question for that as well is your LinkedIn page. How important is it to have a great LinkedIn page for employers to really look at and to want to pick you as a candidate for a job?
It's funny because I just did, I like to do like a monthly training with my team. And over the last few months, we did one all around LinkedIn, and we did one all around resumes. So I'll start with the LinkedIn piece first. I think the LinkedIn is critical. I'm not a big social media person myself, but I do have a LinkedIn. I'm a big proponent of having one. I think that knowing that, your typical resume is going to be 1 to 2 pages, your LinkedIn can be your all history from all time. I mean, you can put skills, you can get recommendations, you can put volunteering, you can follow other people that are in your industry or outside of your industry for their thought leadership and their knowledge. I have employees that have been in business for 20 years and didn't have a LinkedIn. And I said, that's okay. Let's start somewhere. I've seen veterans that don't have one. They didn't do it. Maybe it wasn't a big thing to get trained on. I think start if you can, and it doesn't have to have every single detail ever. What I also think is important in my mind, because it ties in with your resume in the sense that recruiter is going to look at your 2-page resume. You can't put every detail ever on your resume. It has to be very concise, clear, to the point, and summarize, what you've accomplished. Hey, I managed X million of dollars, or I managed X million personnel, or I worked on these X projects. You're really trying to quantify in there, but you'd want to stick to like 3 to 5 bullet points kind of under each job. But then as you grow your career, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years down the line, you can't have all 30 jobs you've ever held in there either. But your LinkedIn, you can have that. So I think the resume is important. And I also think, including a link back to your LinkedIn so that if recruiters looking at it's important. I think taking a look at it every year or so. Don't wait until you're looking for a job or until you have to find a job to go back and go, oh crap, what did I do for 3 years? Add to it as you get promoted, as you grow, as you learn new skills, take new classes, things like that. I'd also say from a military jargon perspective, I guess I was fortunate that in one of my kind of first big corporate jobs, the recruiter was a former veteran herself. And so while she didn't necessarily understand everything I wrote about being Army, she still kind of understood the type of value that a veteran brings to the organization. So that's one thing I would say is, like, as veterans are getting out, understand which organizations are veteran friendly, understand which organizations have veterans in the recruitment space, and networking and trying to connect with them. I see a lot on LinkedIn where, people send you this random connect and ask you to refer them for a job. No, hi, hello, how are you doing? Nothing. Realize that, you don't want to burn bridges with people. You don't have to try to be everybody's best friend either. But know that if you're going to try to form a connection with somebody for employment, that you probably should at least introduce yourself a little bit more than just seeking a job. So I think they both go hand in hand. The one thing that I wanted to say when you had sent me a former clip of another veteran you interviewed, and he stressed the importance of cover letters. I'm the opposite. I've never used a cover letter. I don't find a value in a cover letter. And I think it's a difference of opinions because I've seen it very split. Many people are very yes to it, very people are very no to it. I guess maybe I've just been fortunate without it. But I kind of think it's just another addition that I have to do and complete for every position I may be interested in. And I've also kind of stuck the line of having the one kind of solidified resume. I also hear the opinion of tailoring your resume to every position. I haven't done that. I mean, I've had, fortunate positions and been able to move up in my career. So I think likely as you interview people, you're going to get a lot of split opinions on things. And maybe it's just people's background or their positions as to why they feel that way. But I would say I have to agree to disagree with the other gentleman that you interviewed.
Definitely, and this is what Pay It Forward is all about. It's to hear, your opinion, your success story, and what can help veterans. Whether we do a cover letter. I don't personally have a cover letter myself. So when he was kind of talking about that, I was like, I don't even know what a cover letter really is. But it's definitely to hear you guys' opinion, and we very much value and thank you for coming out and actually talking to us. Before I wrap this up, I have the famous question: is there anything, whether it was something you wish you would have known, is there anything or any tips or any advice you would like to give our veterans who are currently listening to this today, whether they're home or overseas or anywhere in this world, that you would like to give that will help them improve or just better their lives?
Yeah, I would say the tip would be thinking about where you see your path going in the military. Do you foresee yourself, serving your 2, 4, 6, 8 years and getting out? Do you see yourself making a career of it 20, 30 years in? You don't always know if you're going to make a career of it, considering life circumstances and things. But for me, while I was in, the promotion was very hard to get. It was a points-based system. And depending on your job, you had to have a different level of points. And some people's jobs, like, I'll just make one up. If you were a cook or a water maintenance person, you may have been able to get promoted a lot quicker. And I see a lot of people that picked jobs that had a lower point system for promotion, get promoted, and then move over into the job that they wanted. If I had known what I know now, I would have done the same thing. I'd also think about, how does your job now translate? And if it doesn't translate to the civilian world, consider potentially trying to get retraining or reclassed into something that does. I met a lot of guys that were field artillery. They were 11 Bravos. They were in the Middle East shooting people and things like that. And a lot of them got out and didn't know what they were supposed to do. Like, I don't know if I want to be a cop or in law enforcement. A lot of them I saw went out and got backgrounds in cybersecurity or information technology. And so that's the one thing I would say is take as much advice, take advice in the military with a grain of salt. You're going to have people that are going to give you great advice. You're going to have people that are going to give you bad advice. I had a leader once that said, put the good in your pocket. And he said, but be mindful of the bad. I think I learned a lot more from bad leaders as to this is what I don't want to be like when I'm in management versus the good leaders I had. And knowing that not everybody's path's the same. I met people that went to beautiful places like Hawaii and Italy and Japan. And I went to the Middle East in the middle of the woods. And so I see a lot of comparison, well, you did this or you did that. I think that we shouldn't compare each other. We can't always choose where we go and what happens, but just try to make the best of it and know that, if you're in right now or you're going to go in, that's not forever. And you are going to get out and your life's going to be different and you'll have to adjust to that. And I think knowing too that, you do have the camaraderie of all the people that you're with there. I tell my own employees, we used to say it in the Army, they used to say, embrace the suck. And I tell my employees, you have to embrace the suck together. Know that when we're having rough days, we're all having rough days. But if we stick together and we move forward as a group, we're going to make it. If we don't, we're going to have problems. So it was a very long-winded answer, but those are the things I would say or recommend to somebody if they're in right now.
No, that was a perfect answer, Charlene. I believe that was a really perfect answer because you know that's what we're here for. We're here to seek vets who give advice that you know they want they want to give back and they really want to have their voices heard to help people and kind of give people that voice that you know you might I'm pretty sure you answered a bunch of questions that some of our current viewers are watching and they're probably like, wow, like maybe I should, just hunker down, knock this out. I got this. It's just an inspiration. It definitely is for me. If not for anybody, it definitely is for me. And I do want to respect your time, Charlene. And, I want to thank you, especially for, connecting back and getting on this live, not just, conversate with me for 30 minutes, but to definitely help a lot of veterans out there who need help, who might not, have that voice. You definitely help not just me, but a lot of people. And, I'd like to thank our viewers again. And again, Charlene, I'd like to thank you again for just taking your time out of your day to come on here and for paying it forward. That's it. Thank you so much. And again, just thank you.
Thank you.